Employers of Reddit, what is the most ducked up thing you have caught your staff doing? NSFW. When I worked nights at Sonic, there was a night when one of the cooks knew his parents were going to give him a drug test, and we all knew he wouldn't pass it. So one of the other cooks went to the bathroom and gave him his sample in a styrofoam cup. As he handed it to guy getting tested, he said, "Here, I should pass." They then decided to put it in the steamer to keep it warm and viable. He didn't pass. Once when I worked at IHOP, I was closing and went out to the dumpster to throw out some garbage and found my totally hot manager blowing the head chef. I used to work for a small rural cable company. I was a technician shift manager. One day, we got several calls that porn was being broadcast on the local info channel. So I hop in a service truck and drive to the head end, the substation that the signals are pushed out from, and I see another tech's truck parked in the drive. I just assumed that the other tech had beaten me to the head end, so I go in to assist. As soon as I open the door, I see this tech with his pants around his ankles giving his meat the beating of a lifetime. He stops mid-stroke and just stares at me like a spotlighted deer holding his cock in his hand. Turns out, he had decided to stop in for a nice private jerk-off and had mistakenly put his porno tape in the wrong VCR, broadcasting it out to the entire service area. He just pulls up his pants, says "I guess I'm fired," gets in his truck and takes it back to the office. I never saw him again. We all laughed about that one for a long time. Edit. No, he never knew that he had broadcasted it. Edit 2. Gold. You duckers are awesome. When I was managing a Jersey Mike's in college, I had an employee who I hired who was a culinary student. I had no idea why he was applying to a sandwich shop, but he seemed alright even though I knew more about food than he did. Immediately we knew something was off when he used the terms wife, fiancé and girlfriend interchangeably when describing his significant other who worked as a cashier at CVS across the street. Fast forward about a month, and we realize that he is constantly using the internet on our cash register, which was just a touchscreen computer. During the afternoons when it was slow, he wouldn't take care of any of the cleaning, just constantly surf the internet. Around the same time, some of my other employees, who went to the same college as me, started talking about how he was trying to get them to sleep with his wife, girlfriend, fiancé, and eventually him as well. So, one afternoon I tell our franchise owner about this, because we think it's kind of funny, while we are talking about how to get him to pull his share of the weight cleaning. So we decide to check the internet history and it's mostly been deleted except for a swingers site that he had been to that day. The dumbus had his username and password saved, so we got to see his whole profile, complete with pictures of him and his wife being penetrated by different dudes every which way as possible. We then decide to check the temporary internet files, and we see all kinds of porn, mostly pictures of other swingers who are like fat and 55. But also everything else, including a lot of bestiality involving mostly horses and women. Needless to say, he didn't have a job after that. Back in college, I used to buy the day shift manager for a surfboard store in La Jolla Shores, California. We would sell boards to bros and make tons of money. Well, one day, I noticed that one of the surfboards seemed a little weirded out. Upon further inspection, I noticed that the top where the string attached was loose. I took it off and could see there was what looked like dried blood smeared on the inside of the board. I looked at the other boards, and they were all the same. I put in a hidden camera and caught one of our employees named Tristan putting the blood inside the boards. We called the police, and upon questioning, his main motive was to have sharks eat all the surfers so he could have all the tasty waves to himself. Cops didn't really see much wrong with that. They were territorial surfers back in the 80s probably. We also didn't think that was good enough reason to fire him, so he still works there. Although, we do have to search him for blood before every shift. We caught one of our bakers brewing pineapple beer in the upright prover. She was then getting raucously drunk and trying to fight the other bakers. It was pretty ducking good pineapple beer, but we fired her. Managed a gas station for about 3 years. Came in one night during night shift unannounced because I had forgotten to email a report to my boss earlier in the day. Walk into the office in the back and my two employees, one a 50-year-old man who had a wife and kids, the other an 18-year-old girl who had been out of high school for 2 months, are just going the duck at it on the desk. I flipped it. I manage a home health company. I discovered that one of my caregivers stole an entire morphine drip bag from a dying client of ours. She had 10,000 units of morphine in her system when she was drug tested, and she sold the rest on the street. I used to own a pizza place, and in our basement is where we stored everything. I sent one of the kids downstairs to get boxes, and about 20 minutes go by and I'm thinking, where the hell is Jen? I send one of the guys who works for me downstairs to go check what's going on. Mind you, it's a Friday night and we are jam-packed. 10 minutes goes by and I'm thinking, alright, enough is enough. I go downstairs myself. I see the girl who I originally sent downstairs blowing the guy who works for me who I just sent down, and also getting railed out by some other guy who I didn't even know. We lost 2 employees that night. My first job out of college was an entry-level management position with a uniform linen rental company. I worked first shift in the plant where everything was sorted, laundered, etc. As part of the management training, I was required to spend some time with the third shift, which was a skeleton crew of maybe a dozen people. There was one semi-attractive girl in the bunch, a little rough around the edges, prettiest girl in the trailer park type. During a break I chatted with her and she told me about her 2 little kids, about their dad being gone, how she worked overnights while her mom stayed with the kids so that she could be home with them during the day. She told me she would go home at the end of her shift and crawl into bed with her littlest one to sleep for a few hours before getting up to get the older one off to school. I thought, whoa, she seems really nice and is working so hard to take care of her kids, barely sleeping each night so she can earn a living and still be there for them. What a great mom and a great person. And then on the next break I went out back and saw her bent over the picnic table where people went to smoke, getting banged like a porn star by the guy who ran the washers and dryers. Edit, a word. Worked at a very large software company when I came out of university. My team had considerable turnover and were in need of a manager in the quality assurance department. MR. X is hired. Resume is impeccable. Well dressed, yada yada yada. 3 weeks into his employment he comes to me and asks for $5 for lunch, claiming that he'd forgot his wallet. Turns out that he asked 90% of the people on our floor for $5 and collected about $360 in 2 hours. At the same time, he was scoping out all the spots that people kept change in their desks. That night, he returned, raided all the desks for change. It was estimated to be over $2,000, and stole 22 high-end development laptops. Never saw him again. Fake name, fake SSN, fake resume, etc. I used to work in this factory on an evening shift. Most of us college students. I was sort of in charge mostly because I had some seniority. We had one guy on the crew who was constantly late, always going to break early and coming back late, constantly missing days without notice, making the rest of us cover his work. Whenever someone confronted him he would accuse everyone of being racist. He was the only black guy in the entire factory, so it isn't outside the realm of possibility that someone had said something racist to him. But the truth was the guy was a lazy little it and he was trying to duck responsibility every step of the way. Finally around the end of January he disappeared. Not unusual. Most employees quit working there within a few months and they do it by simply not showing up anymore. A month later I'm building parts. I look up and Lazy is standing there, asking why his code didn't work to open the security door anymore. My boss, 5-foot ball of angry female energy, gets right in his face and asks him how he got in and why he's even here. I quote, "I thought I had February off for Black History Month." He also used a disability placard to get a good parking space. He was on the college football team, and later went to prison for stealing books out of dorm rooms and reselling them to the campus bookstore. Edit, I just want to clarify because of a few messages I've gotten. I don't believe that he believed he was going to get February off. I think he ducked around for a month then panicked because he found out he needed money and jobs were scarce in our little college town. So it was a last ditch effort to get his job back. I caught 2 of my employees on our security tapes literally bathing in my locked up stash of hamburgers once. I work construction for a living, and while the boss and myself were working on one job while 2 others from our crew were supposed to be laying hardwood at another location, well, My boss receives a call from the homeowner telling us immediately to head to her house. We get there, and these two assholes have brought in a go-kart and had the engine dismantled. And for the past 2 weeks no real work had been done. Homeowner asked if we were getting paid to work on go-karts or her house. They were promptly fired. Had a co-worker who managed a skate shop. He got fired when he let a kid run the shop while he met a girl at the bus stop out front, then ducked her behind the shop. I'm not the boss, but I know it happened. The assistant manager at my old bar job stayed behind one night after her shift drinking with her boyfriend and 2 other customers. They were pouring their own drinks, shots, pints of lager and a lot of whiskey and vodka. After just dancing around and talking, the assistant manager decided it would be funny for her and her friend to strip and run along the bar naked. She was caught on CCTV and the big boss sacked her. I was friends with the supervisor and he showed me the tape. It was hilarious. She was hired back 2 months later by the big boss, given her old job with even more responsibility. Insane. My father once caught a drunk employee masturbating on a colleague's printer in the colleague's office, an open space office. Not me specifically, but my dad has owned his own company for a while and I grew up being involved with it. I remember when I was young, sometimes I'd have to go to work with my dad and he'd let me play around on one of the computers while he worked. I remember one time, I'm just being around on Neopets or something. When I click the drop down bar on the browser, I'm young as it and I know the sites weren't allowed. It was literally a bunch of blatant porn sites. Some typed out and various cases as if that made a difference. I just remember it being morethan6.com, morethan-girls.com, morethan-girls.com, morethan-etc, etc. I was worried it was my dad doing it and that I'd get in trouble if I brought it up, so I didn't. About a year later my dad fired one of his co-workers. I didn't find out till I got the talk it was for the porn. The dude would come into work early, beat off, stay late, beat off, and act like he was doing extra work. Managed a few Jack-in-the-Box restaurants. 1. Notice graveyard shift is running really slow drive-through times. Look at the cameras and scary gangbanger cook is banging 60-year-old hippie manager in the break room. 2. Drive up to a store at 3 AM. Nobody will come to the speaker. Find crew on the roof smoking weed and playing poker with a deck of cards made out of fry boxes. 3. Caught a guy stealing 2 boxes of mayo onion sauce. That's 24 bags of mayo, 2 pounds each. I asked him why and he said I need it. Here are some more. 4. Some stores would dress up for Halloween. I walked into one and the guy behind the register is wearing a skin-tight dress and a wig. No big deal. The problem was, his junk was popping out the front so bad. This dude was packing a wiffle bat. I didn't want to be a jerk and ruin the fun, so I decide to have a costume contest. The winner gets $50 and the rest of the shift off paid. He won and I did not have to hear old ladies complain about the guy. 5. I had a guy call in sick because he had no underwear to wear. 6. When you work for Jack-in-the-Box corporate offices in the training, human resources, maintenance, buyers or any other non-restaurant job, they make you do 1 day of crew training so you know what the crew goes through. So I was taking a new human resources lawyer to her training day and she had a nervous breakdown after about 2 hours working the fryers. She started sweating and looking ill. The next thing you know she flips out and runs out the door screaming. It was slow and she had a helper trainer. Edit. We now know why you should stay in school, so you can spell and write like an adult. I randomly drug test my employees and one time when I went to get the results from the doctor he told me about one of my employees the levels of sugar in his urine are so high that he must have done it on the way here. I don't know how my employee managed that because I drove him to the clinic. I worked at a startup many years ago. We were located in what had previously been a small motorcycle dealership. Because of that design, the front had 2 big windows where they presumably had motorcycles on display. The company mirrored the windows and turned those 2 spaces into a conference room and the VP's office. You couldn't see a damn thing inside those windows with the mirroring. We'd be in the conference room and people would come by and start fixing their hair and junk. So the owner of the building comes by one night and sees the VP boffing one of his employees on his desk. The thing about mirrored windows is they only work if there's light outside to mirror. It was dark out and his office light was on. so their shenanigans were in full display of the traffic out front, in what was, literally, a showroom window. Saw a member of my staff heat up some roast chicken in the microwave in the stockroom. I went back in a few minutes later and she had taken it out of the plastic container and used a shoebox that had been lying around on the floor for a week as a plate. After she finished eating it, she put the bones in the shoebox and left the grease covered box on the floor and went home. She is the most dirty ducking weirdo I have ever met. Worked in a small cafe, registered sign that had big windows at the entrance facing a bank parking lot across the street. On his first day, this guy tells me he's going somewhere, doesn't ask for a break, just tells me he's leaving. I watch him go across the street, wait in the bank's ATM area for a few minutes, then meet a guy for 30 seconds and come back across the street and straight into the bathroom of the cafe registered sign. Sniff, sniff, cough, and out he comes into the very fancy and very tiny cafe registered sign. When I told him to go home, he said okay, but by law you have to pay me for the entire shift. He wasn't wrong, but he was certainly an asshole. Caught a guy washing his D in the sink. We let it slide, but we called him Soap D from then on. Edit. Haha. Let it slide. Chemist here. Remember how in middle school you watched some form of cheesy video covering the basics? Like don't play with mercury and mouth pipetting is idiotic, or wear your ducking safety goggles. Pretty basic. So when it's your career, you don't even think twice. Unless you're an idiot. A few years ago my company hired a new director. Yes, a director. Someone responsible for being in charge of the whole ducking lab. And this is no joke, one of the most reputable academic research institutes in the world. Yes, world. I was his employee, and on the safety team. I was already pretty sure the guy was an overinflated prick, and then one day I walked into the lab just in the nick of time to watch him siphoning acetone try with his mouth while trying to impress a pretty girl who worked in another department. Capital I. Dumbfounded. Watched him not pull the tube out in time, fill his own mouth with it, and proceed to spit it out on the lab floor. This all happened within 5 seconds of my walking through the door. Acetone metabolizes in the body to hydrogen cyanide. For anyone who needs a little extra help understanding just how ducking stupid of a thing this is to do, I immediately pieced the duck out, reported the incident anonymously to the safety committee to avoid retribution from this duckwood. I don't even think either him or the girl actually saw me, and found a position with another company. Edit. For those of you who need to know what happened to him, maybe he got nauseous or vomited, I have no idea. Trust me, word is he's still there running the place into the ground. There was a guy who watched porn and would then go to the bathroom to get off. He got away with it for a good 3 months. 2. A guy at my last job was spending his workdays doing other people's taxes on tax software that he pirated on his work computer. He got caught because he was eating up tons of company bandwidth. After he was fired, they found a ton of porn, movies and music on that same computer. Used to manage a Jamba Juice, West Coast smoothie place. Found out my employees would input the name CI on multiple receipts. Asked what it meant. Didn't get a straight answer. Eventually watched some videos and got some employees to fess up. Meant spit in it. Apparently my workers would team up against the occasional irate customer and group spit into a smoothie before blending. Not me, but my dad works at a pharmacy where he is the general manager. Just a couple of weeks ago he caught one of his co-workers stealing very heavy pain medications, having a brain fart and can't remember what they're called. Anyways, that's not the ducked up part. Apparently the lady was pregnant and trying to kill the baby without anyone knowing. She tried to justify that she was getting divorced with her husband and didn't want to be carrying his kid. Christmas party a month ago. Employee was smoking crack in the bathroom. Till everyone either gets laid or masturbates at work except me. I worked in IT in a large organization. I got a call about a workstation that was in a lab that didn't get a lot of use. It wouldn't take any patches that were pushed to it and was giving the users a lot of strange errors. I wasn't even able to connect to the desktop remotely, though I could still mount the network drive. I start looking around the drive in a few locations that viruses at the time were using to store their payload, and didn't find anything, but happened to notice that the drive was full. This was odd because most drives at the place didn't even get half full and this computer got less use than almost any other. And the use it got didn't involve creating a lot of files. Or big files. Long story short, I found gigs and gigs of porn on this thing. Like 30-50 gigs of porn. Our sysadmin had an everyone gets one philosophy. No matter what you were doing, we wouldn't rat you out to your boss unless you got a chance to not do it again. Since this was a shared computer, and we didn't want to get involved with people we didn't know personally, we just deleted the porn. I mean, there's no way you can not notice that your 50 gigs of porn has been deleted. About a week later we get a call that the problem is back. I check and the drive is full again. 50 ducking gigs of porn downloaded in 1 week. Guy was fired that day. I work at a sports bar cantina style spot. We have jello shots in big syringes and they're a big hit. Especially with girls. Well, one day I go out to the back patio and there's a crowd like someone is having a dance battle. Except it's the middle of the day and we're playing classic rock. I take a closer look and a few of the employees and regulars are watching one of our security guards inject the jello shot into his ass. He was off the clock and it was funny. So I told him to throw that syringe away and try not to die from alcohol poisoning on the premises. Oh, I have another one. I'm cheating because I was the employee in this case. My boss, restaurant owner, told me to catch all the baby rats in the restaurant. I caught about 6 of them and was like, hey Erin, I'm gonna go out back and drown these. She said I shouldn't and instead gave me money to buy a cage for them so that she could give them to her 4-year-old son as pets. They lived above the restaurant and she didn't see an issue with giving him wild rats. Same woman asked me if I knew where to buy sugar while she was breastfeeding. Also smoked in the kitchen while cooking and would rub her gouty and calloused feet in between orders. Another place I worked, the guy caught a mouse and cooked it on the grill because the smell of the burning flesh will scare the other mice away from the restaurant. Never ordered food from there again.